Hello. Here we are again. Charles was up all night again, so he fell asleep on the couch after dinner again. So he did take the baby, but that's okay. What is that? What's that look? Huh? Hmm. So I think we're on chapter 14. Oh yeah, my thing I like to do. What did you have for dinner? Um, or if you haven't had dinner yet, what are you going to have for dinner? What did you have for dinner last night? We had Spanish rice with green salad, and then I made buttermilk buns. And they're so good. I haven't made them for years for some reason. Anyway, that was yum. So, chapter 13 that we finished yesterday, it's so sad because Judith she likes John Holbrook, but Mercy's in love with John Holbrook. And then Kit finds out that John's in love with Mercy, so he was gonna miss the corn husking party that the whole community was doing and stay with Mercy. And he just told uh, Matthew Wood that he wanted to talk to him. And so Judith immediately assumed it was about her and was like, oh, he should. We all know what he wants. Let's just say yes so we can go together to the corn husking. And so the father said, oh, of course, yes. And he gave his permission for John to marry Judith. And he wasn't going to ask for Judith. He was going to ask for Mercy, which is so, so sad. Anyway, poor Kit. And she's the only one that knows for sure that Mercy's in love with John and that John's in love with Mercy because Mercy doesn't know John's in love with her, and John isn't quite sure if Mercy's in love with him, but Kit knows, so that's kind of tough. Oh, and I'm going to show off some of my stuff that I make, right? Because I'm so proud of it. I make cute stuff, right? So one of the things that I'm quite proud of, one of the things I do that nobody else does is I make coffee bean jewelry. So you can see these. I know my camera's not great, but these are coffee beans, real coffee beans, and I dip them in resin. And it's actually really hard because, coffee beans are really delicate and you have to drill a tiny little hole in them to get a ring through them to dip them. And probably 70 or 80% of them break as you're drilling, so you just have to. Oh, they're hard to work with, but they're so cute when they're done. Caden's so happy. So I have these super cute. These ones are wire wrapped and then dipped in resin. And then I have another pair of the coffee bean that are just the bean and the cute post. What, you like those? They're so cute. And then just for fun, because it's almost Christmas, I did a little series. This is a cute little Christmas light necklace. Cute, right? And then the matching earrings. So the red and the green Christmas light. Cute, right? Yeah, so cute. Anyway, they go together. Okay, loves all my stuff. Anyway, so now on to chapter 14. And let's see how it goes. Chapter 14. After the keen, still days of September, the October sun filled the world with mellow warmth. Before Kit's eyes, a miracle took place for which she was totally unprepared. She stood in the doorway of her uncle's house and held her breath with wonder. The maple tree in front of the doorstep burned like a gigantic red torch. She's grew up in Barbados. She's never seen fall colors before. That's one thing I miss in Florida. I miss the fall colors. And snow. I miss snow. The oaks along the roadway glowed yellow and bronze. The fields stretched like a carpet of jewels, emerald and topaz and garnet. Everywhere she walked, the colors shouted and sang around her. The dried brown leaves crackled beneath her feet and gave off a delicious, smoky fragrance. That is something people who grow up in tropical climates will never know is, the smell of fall. The air is crisp and cool, and the leaves are changing colors, and you walk through grass that's just covered with leaves, and the crackle and the crunch and that smell and that cold, really crisp air. You don't get that in the warmer climates. You don't get cold and crisp. You have humidity, and it's beautiful. Like the weather here is beautiful right now. It's 70 degrees. It's so nice, gorgeous days. But I do miss a clear, cold, crisp day and walking through the fallen leaves and fall. You don't get 4 seasons down here in the South. No one had ever told her about autumn in England. In New England, whoops, not England. They're in New England, North America, Northeast. The excitement of it beat in her blood. Every morning she woke with a new confidence and buoyancy she could not explain. In October, any wonderful, unexpected thing might be possible. As the days grew shorter and colder, this new sense of expectancy increased, and her heightened awareness seemed to give new... What did you do, baby? Oh, what are you doing? He's just opening windows left and right. Ah, what a helper. What's on you? Otherwise, she might have overlooked a small scene that, once noticed, she would never entirely forget. Going through the shed door one morning with her arms full of linens to spread on the grass, Kit halted, wary as always, at the sight of her uncle. He was standing not far from the house, looking out toward the river, his face half turned from her. He did not notice her. He simply stood idle for one rare moment, staring at the golden fields. The flaming color was dimmed now. Great masses of curled brown leaves lay tangled in the dried grass, and the branches that thrust against the graying sky were almost bare. As Kit watched, her uncle bent slowly and scooped up a handful of brown dirt from the garden patch at his feet, and stood holding it with a curious reverence, as though it were some priceless substance. As it crumbled through his fingers, his hand convulsed in a sudden, passionate gesture. Kit backed through the door and closed it softly. She felt as though she had eavesdropped. When she had hated and feared her uncle for so long, why did it suddenly hurt to think of that lonely, defiant figure in the garden? Judith's voice interrupted her groping thoughts. "Hurry up, Kit," she called. "That's a third group of people that have gone past the house. They say there's a trading ship coming up the river. If we finish the washing, we can watch it come in." Kit's heart leaped. "What ship? What does that matter? It will bring mail and perhaps some new bolts of cloth and maybe the scissors we ordered from Boston. Anyway, it's fun to see a ship come in, and there won't be many more this fall." You're a nut. Are you a nut? An odd confusion, half eagerness and half reluctance tossed Kit's spirits to and fro. She was minded to stay at home and help Mercy, even as her feet hurried along beside Judith. But the moment they rounded the bend in the road, she forgot her uncertainty. There was the Dolphin, coming up the river with all her sails. The curving tail of the prow was chipped and dull. The hull was battered and knobby with barnacles, the canvas dark and weathered. Yet how beautiful she was! In a surge of memories, Kit could almost feel the deck lifting beneath her feet, and a longing almost like homesickness caught at her throat. How she would love to sail on the Dolphin again. Forgotten was the smell of horses, the motionless waiting, the sudden terror of gale and lightning. She remembered only the endless, shining reaches of water that stretched to the end of the world, the vast arc of the Milky Way. That is something out on the ocean. The stars are like no other. There is no light from anywhere. No city light, no town light. And it's just no mountains blocking the stars. It's like from horizon to horizon. It's crazy. If you've never been out on the ocean at night, there's nothing like it. It's so cool. The vast arc of the Milky Way and the soaring rush of salt wind that blew back her hair. What would she give to stand on the deck of the Dolphin, facing down the river toward the open sea and Barbados? The Dolphin rounded to, her topsails were furled, and with a great creaking of lines and shudder of canvas she came to rest alongside the Wethersfield dock. The onlookers crowded forward as bales and barrels and knobby bundles were passed over the sides into their eager hands. Kit and Judith stood a little aside. Are you noisy? Enjoying the bustling scene. The excitement of the crowd seemed to be contagious. When Judith spoke, Kit was surprised to find that her own lips were strangely unmanageable. A queer trembling made her clench her fist tight. She could not turn her eyes away from the deck of the ship. At last she glimpsed a fair head emerging from the hatchway, almost hidden behind a vast load. It was some time before Nat Eaton, carelessly scanning the busy wharf, caught sight of her. Then he raised one hand in the briefest possible greeting. Kit knew how Nat could be when he was absorbed in ship's business. She waited, pretending an interest in each bit of cargo that came over the rail. Gradually, the citizens of Wethersfield claimed their orders. The merchants from Hartford counted off the barrels of nails and oil and salt, and only a handful of idlers still stood about. Come on, Kit, urged Judith. There's nothing more to see. No, Kit had to agree. Hey, what you doing? What? There was not the slightest excuse for lingering further. With a little shrug, she turned away, and immediately she heard his voice. Mistress Tyler, wait a moment. She whirled back to see Nat bounding over the rail. He came toward her with his light, buoyant step, carrying under his arm a bulky package wrapped in a bit of sailcloth. Good day to you, Mistress Wood, he greeted Judith respectfully. Where are you going? Then he turned to Kit. Would you be kind enough to deliver a bit of cargo for me? The words were acceptable enough. It was the indifferent tone that was bewildering. 'Tis a length of woolen cloth I picked up for Hannah, he explained, holding out the package. Kit took it reluctantly. She'll be waiting for you to come yourself. I know, but my father is anxious to be off. Lose this wind and we'll be delayed here for days. Hannah might need this, if you can spare the time from your fashionable friends. Kit's mouth opened, but before she could speak, he went on. An interesting cargo we had this trip, one item in particular. 16 diamond-paned windows ordered from England by one William Ashby. They say he's building a house for his bride, a hoity-toity young lady from Barbados, I hear, and the best is none too good for her. No oiled paper in her windows. No, indeed. She was taken aback by the biting mockery in his voice. You might have mentioned it, Kit, he said, lowering his voice. There's nothing definite to tell. That order looks definite enough. While she searched for something to say, she knew that his eyes had not missed the hot surge she could feel sweeping up from the collar of her cloak to the hood at her forehead. May I congratulate you, he said. To think I worried about that little bird. I might have known it would gobble up a nice fat partridge in no time. Then, with a quick bow to Judith, he was gone. What bird? What was he talking about? Panted Judith, breathlessly keeping up with Kit's sudden haste, her head turned away to hide her angry tears. Kit did not answer. Honestly, Kit, you do know the oddest people. How did you ever meet a common riverman like that? I told you he was the captain's son. Well, I certainly don't think much of his manners, observed Judith. To Kit's relief, a distraction awaited them at home. Rachel stood in the doorway, peering anxiously up the road. I declare, she fretted, there is no peace for the poor man. Someone came to fetch him just now. Said a rider came out from Hartford with news this morning, and there's a great crowd at the blacksmith shop. Can you see anything up? Did I skip a page? I didn't. Huh. Oh, there's a great crowd at the blacksmith shop. Can you see anything up the road, Judith? No, said Judith. The square seems quiet. I think it is something to do with Governor Andros of Massachusetts, the one who is determined to take the charter away. Oh dear, your father will be so upset. Then let's get him a good dinner, suggested Judith practically. Don't worry, Mother. The men can take care of the government. Following them into the house, Kit felt grateful to the unpopular Andros. Whatever he had done, he had saved her, for the moment at least, from any more of Judith's questions. Matthew Wood did not come home for the good meal they had made. Late in the afternoon, he came slowly into the kitchen. His shoulders sagged, and he looked ill. "What is it, Matthew?" Rachel hovered over his chair. "Has something terrible happened?" "Only what we have expected," he answered wearily. "Governor Treat and the council have warded it off for nearly a year. Now Sir Edmund Andros has sent word 3 days since that he is setting out from Boston. He will arrive in Hartford on Monday to take over as royal governor in Connecticut. Lay a fire in the company room," he added. "There are some who will want to talk tonight." One other chance bit of news reached them before nightfall. For all his haste, Captain Eaton had missed the wind after all, and the Dolphin lay becalmed just off Wright's Island. Kit took revengeful pleasure in the thought. She hoped they had a good long wait ahead of them. It would serve Nat right if they sat there till the ice set in. He might perfectly well have delivered his own package, and she would make very sure of one thing. She would take care not to deliver it herself till the Dolphin was well on its way towards Saybrook. Well, that was kind of a short chapter. Caden's being happy. Let me see how long the next one is. I might read two tonight. No. We'll go for it. Chapter 15. "It means the death of our free Commonwealth. 'Twill be the end of all we've worked for." The angry voices came clearly through the closed door of the company room. It was impossible not to overhear. Mercy's spinning wheel faltered, and Rachel's hand, lighting a pine knot, trembled so that a spark fell on the table unheeded and left a small black scar. Frequently in the past month the same grim-faced men had called upon Matthew Wood, but tonight the voices had a frightening quality. "They must think it a desperate matter to meet like this on the rare eve of the Sabbath," said Mercy. "Your father never touched his supper," fretted Rachel. "Do you suppose it would do to offer them all a bite when they come out?" Kit dropped a stitch for the third time. She had little concern for the colony of Connecticut, but she was seething with curiosity over one aspect of tonight's business. Some time ago, William had arrived, offered his usual courteous greetings to the women, and then, instead of taking his place by the fireside, had astounded her by knocking boldly on the company room door. More surprising still, he had been admitted, and there he had stayed, behind that closed door, for the past half-hour. Pride could not restrain her tongue another moment. "What in the world is William doing in there?" she burst out. "Why would Uncle Matthew let him in?" "Didn't you know?" Judith threw her a condescending glance. "Know what?" "William came over to father's way of thinking 2 months ago, even before his house was raised, when he had to pay such high taxes on his land." "And how did Judith know this?" Kit stared at her. "I never heard him say a word about it." "Maybe you just weren't listening." Judith's tone had more than a touch of smugness. Chagrined, Kit jerked at another dropped stitch. It was true. Sometimes when William and Judith were talking about the house, it was all she could do to keep her mind from wandering. But she knew she would have remembered anything as important as this. Was William ashamed to admit to her that he had turned against the king? Or did he think she was too stupid to understand? The voices broke out again. "This Governor Andros says right out that deeds signed by the Injuns are no better than scratches of a bear's paw. We are all to beg new grants for land we bought and paid for. Why, the fees alone will leave us paupers. They can come into our meeting house and order us to kneel and whine tunes like their Church of England. My cousin in Boston actually had to put his hand on the holy book to swear in court. I'll shoot any man tries to make me do that." They could hear Matthew's voice, cold and steady, never raised or out of control. "Whatever happens," he was saying, "we do not want any shooting here in Connecticut." "Why not?" broke in another voice. "Should we hand over our freedom without a murmur, like Rhode Island?" "I say defy him," came a hoarse shout. 9 train bands we have ready in Hartford County, nigh unto 1,000 men. Let him look into a row of muskets, and he'll change his tune. "It would mean senseless bloodshed," Matthew said clearly. For nearly an hour the voices went on. "Oh, Caden, no, don't eat that. Ew, yucky. Gross. Don't eat that. That's so yucky. Yeah. That's right. Ew, yucky." Sorry. You can come up here. 1, 2, 3. Woo! What is this face? Why do you make that funny face every time I jump you? I don't know what that is. I think you stink. I have to change it. I'm almost done. Where was I? For nearly an hour, the voices went on, the angry shouting gradually giving way to low, tense words that could not be distinguished. Finally, a silent, tight-mouthed group of men emerged with no interest in the refreshment that Rachel timidly offered. When they had gone, Matthew lowered himself heavily into a chair. It is no use, he said. We must spend the Sabbath in prayer that God will grant us patience. Rachel searched for some words of comfort. I know it is a disappointment, she attempted. But will it truly change our lives so very much? Here in Wethersfield, I mean? We will still all be together in this house, and surely... Ow. And surely we will not lose our rights as citizens of England. Her husband brusquely waved away her comfort. That is all a woman thinks about, he scoffed. Her own house. What use are her so-called rights of England? Nothing but a mockery. Everything we have built here in Connecticut will be wiped out. Our council, our courts, will be mere shadows with no real power in them. Oh, we will endure it, of course. What else can we do? If only we could somehow hold back the charter itself. This man has no right to take it from us. Not till later, when she and Judith undressed, shivering in the chilly upstairs chamber, did Kit dare to venture a comment. They don't seem to realize, she whispered, how powerful the royal fleet is. Once, when the royalists were trying to hold Bridgetown, Barbados, Parliament sent a troop ship and subdued them in no time. Oh, I don't think there will be any fighting, said Judith confidently. It is just that men like father don't like to be dictated to, but Dr. Bulkeley says the charter was never intended to be as free as they have made it. He thinks the men of Connecticut have taken advantage of the king's generosity. So I suppose John thinks so too, Kit couldn't resist adding. Once Judith would have flared, but her new happiness was hard to shake. Poor John, she laughed now. He's so mixed up between Dr. Bulkeley and father. Honestly, Kit, I agree with Mother. I don't believe it will change our lives much. Men make an awful fuss about such things. I just wish it had not happened 4 days before Thanksgiving. It's going to spoil the holiday to have everyone so gloomy. I would be curious to see this Governor Ambrose, said Kit. You remember Dr. Bulkeley told us he used to be a captain of the dragoons in Barbados. Maybe we can see him, said Judith, blowing out the candle and hopping into bed. If he comes up... Sorry. You're so noisy. You're so noisy. Yeah, you're a noisy baby. That's such a funny face. He doesn't usually make that face. I don't know. It's so funny. Okay. Give me. Hi. I love you. Where was I? I'd be curious to see this Governor Andros, said Kit. You remember Dr. Bulkeley told us he used to be, I did read that, a captain of the dragoons in Barbados. Maybe we can see him, said Judith, blowing out the candle and hopping into bed. If he comes up from New London, he'll have to cross the river at Smith's Ferry. I'm going to get a peek at him, no matter what Father says. You don't often get a chance to see all those soldiers in uniform. For a good many Wethersfield citizens, curiosity got the better of loyalty on the next afternoon. Kit and Judith met a fair number of farmers and their wives traveling along South Road and ranging along the bank of the river. They had a good hour's wait ahead of them, lightened by the arrival of an escort from Hartford, led by Captain Samuel Talcott, one of the Wethersfield men Kit noticed with surprise, who would occasionally join the meetings in her uncle's company room. I'd have no part in greeting that, Andros, commented one farmer. The crabs would pick my bones before I'd do it. Look at the fine horse all ready for his highness. They should have asked me. I'd have found the horse for him, all right. Captain Talcott sensed the growing anger in the waiting crowd and raised his voice. There is to be no demonstration, he reminded them. The governor comes here under orders from his majesty. He will be received with all due courtesy. Presently a murmur arose as the first red-coated horseman approached on the opposite shore. "There he is!" excited voices cried. "The tall one, just getting off his horse. He's getting into the first boat there." The ferry boats crossed the wide river without mishap, and the party from Boston stepped out onto the shore at Wethersfield. More than 70 men there were, with 2 trumpeters and a band of grenadiers. Kit thrilled at the sight of the familiar red coats. How tall and handsome and trim they looked beside the homespun blue-coated shoulders. And Andros! He was a true cavalier, with his fine embroidered coat, his commanding air, and the wealth of dark curls that flowed over his velvet collar. How elegantly he sat in the saddle of his borrowed horse. Why, he was a gentleman, an officer of the King's Dragoons, a knight. Who were these common resentful farmers to dispute his royal right? He made their defiance seem childish. Oh, I didn't even notice. So the camera was aimed way down. Sorry. Governor Andros had no cause to complain of his reception at Wethersfield. The people kept a respectful silence. The Hartford escort saluted and showed a praiseworthy discipline. As the band rode out of sight along the road, a few fists were shaken, and some small boys hurled clumps of mud after the last horse's hooves. For the most part, it was a somber group that straggled back to their neglected chores. The magnificence of Andros and his procession had shaken their confidence. They all knew that this haughty man was on his way to meet with their council, and that before nightfall he would hold their very lives in his hand. Resignation and despair settled over the household that evening, as though Kit thought it were the eve of that doomsday that the minister warned of in Sabbath meeting. There was no company to look forward to. William was a member of the militia in Hartford, and John had sent word that he must care for 2 of Dr. Bulkley's patients while the doctor attended the session. In Matthew's scowling presence, the others scarcely dared whisper. Kit was thankful when she and Judith could escape to the cold sanctuary of the upstairs chamber. They had been fast asleep for some time when they were startled awake by the thudding of hoofs in the road below and the whinny of a horse suddenly reined in. There was an echoing rap of a musket against the door. Matthew must have been awake and waiting, for before the rapping ceased they heard the bolts slide back. Instantly Judith was out of bed, with Kit scrambling after her, snatching heavy cloaks to pull over their nightclothes. The girls flung open the chamber door. From the opposite room came Rachel, still fully dressed. The 3 women crowded together on the narrow stairs. To Kit's astonishment, the man who stepped through the door into the light of Matthew's candle was William. It is safe, sir," he burst out before the door was shut. "The charter's safe, where he can never lay a hand on it." "Thank God," Matthew exclaimed reverently. "You were at the meeting, William?" "Yes, sir, since 4 o'clock. Sir Edmund got a stomach full of talking this day. The speeches of welcome lasted near to 3 hours before he could get in a word of business." "And the charter?" "It was there all the time, in the middle of the table, in plain sight. Sir Edmund made a long speech about how much better off we were all going to be. It got dark, and finally he asked for lights. Before long, the room got hot and full of smoke, and when someone opened a window, the draught blew out the candles. It took quite a few minutes to get them lighted. Nobody moved. Far as I could see, everybody stayed right in their places, but when the candles were lit, the charter had disappeared. They looked high and low for it, all over the room, and never found a trace." "Was the governor angered?" "You'd have admired him, sir. You couldn't help it. He sat there cool as an icicle. He knew the paper wasn't going to be found, and he wouldn't stoop to ask a question about it. As it was, he could afford to ignore it." "Aye," said Matthew grimly. "He had the power in his hands without it." "Yes. Governor Treat read a statement, and they all signed it. The colony of Connecticut is annexed to Massachusetts. Governor Treat will be appointed colonel of militia." "And Gershom Bulkley?" "They say he will be appointed a justice of the peace for his loyalty." Snorted Matthew. He thought the news over for a moment. "The charter," he insisted. "Do you know what happened to it?" William hesitated. For the first time he acknowledged the presence of the 3 women by one brief, embarrassed glance up the stairs. "No, sir," he answered. "The room was dark." "Then how do you know it is safe?" "It is safe, sir," said William positively. "Then we can hold up our heads," said Matthew, taking a long breath. "Thank you for coming, my boy." When the door was shut behind William, Matthew turned to the women on the stairs. "We can praise God for this night," he said. Now get to bed, all of you, and remember, if there's any talk about this, you have heard nothing. Nothing at all. Do you understand? Can you sleep now, Matthew? Asked his wife anxiously. Aye, agreed Matthew. I can sleep now. There are hard times ahead for Connecticut, but someday, when the hard times have passed, as they must pass, we will bring our charter out of hiding and begin again. Oh, goodness. Sorry, he's so noisy. And we will show the world what it means to be free men. The two girls crept back into the cold chamber and climbed shivering into bed. As Kit lay wide awake in the blackness, some distant shouts, a snatch of raucous, unrestrained singing such as she has never heard before in Wethersfield, sent her mind back to the days of her childhood. She surprised Judith by a sudden giggle. I know where the charter went, she whispered. The spirits took it. What are you talking about? Judith was almost asleep. I just remembered. It is All Hallows Eve. This is the night the witches are supposed to ride abroad on broomsticks and the spirits do all sorts of queer things. Nonsense, said Judith. We don't hold with saints' days here in New England. Besides, William knows perfectly well where that charter is. I could tell he does. Snubbed again, Kit fell silent and listened to that unaccustomed shouting in the distance. She felt curiously elated. She knew she had overheard an account of serious insubordination to the king, yet in her heart she was glad that her uncle had known this small victory. Now perhaps they would have some peace in the house. No, it was more than that. Tonight she had understood for the first time what her aunt had seen in that fierce man to make her cross an ocean at his side. There was a sort of a magnificence about him, even without the fine uniform that made Governor Andros so splendid. Lying there in the dark, Kit had to admit it. She was proud of him. All right, that is the end of chapter 16. Now this noisy, smelly little boy has been waiting for mother. So we're going to go. And we will pick up chapter 15, right? Oh, 16. Yeah, because we did 14 and 15. Chapter 16 tomorrow. Looking forward to it. And we'll see you then. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. You're such a silly baby. Bye. Oh, there you go. Aw. You're so spoiled. He waved bye. This funny face. I don't know what this is. How can you make that funny face when you're on here? See you tomorrow.